I went to an oncologist, and they said, and they operated almost immediately with stage 4 melanoma. Melanie had stage 4 breast cancer.
A rumor said William Shatner was dying of brain cancer. He had to post a photo of his own face just to prove it wasn't true. That was April. 3 months later, the truth came out, and it was worse. At 95, Shatner has buried a wife, lost a friendship to 5 years of silence, and carried a cancer he barely noticed on his own face. So what did his daughter see during her own fight that he couldn't? The hoax that predicted the truth. The photo William Shatner posted to prove he was not dying was actually taken because his own granddaughter was terrified. When the actor turned 95 years old on March 22, 2026, social media was quietly circulating an unverified rumor about his failing health. By the first week of April, that rumor had mutated into a massive online panic claiming the legendary actor was secretly battling terminal brain cancer. The story spread with such speed that it bypassed entertainment news entirely and went directly into his own home. According to reporting from CBR&E online, the hoax reached Shatner through his immediate family. He was forced to go online to publicly shut down the panic before it spiraled further out of control. He wrote that his daughter had just come over to tell him her daughter heard he had brain cancer. She took a photo of him sitting in his home, and he told his fans he was uploading the picture to prove he was not ill. He said the people who were actually ill were the ones spreading ridiculous stories. He insisted he was completely fine, claiming he was as fit as a fiddle. He was telling the truth about the brain cancer rumor, but he was actively omitting a massive piece of his recent medical history. Shatner laughed off the panic as pure internet nonsense. He presented himself to the public as a remarkably healthy 95-year-old man who remained untouched by severe illness. Fans quickly accepted the photo and the defiant statement as absolute proof that the actor was in perfect condition. The online controversy faded away almost as fast as it had started, and the world moved on. But that confident public denial was shielding a much darker reality. While millions of people spent April debating a fabricated diagnosis, Shatner was keeping a terrifying medical secret entirely to himself. He had actually survived a brutal, very real brush with mortality. The details of his actual medical crisis were far worse than anything the internet had managed to invent. If a rumor about cancer was not true in April, why did the real cancer story only come out 3 months later? Shatner laughed off the hoax as nonsense from people spreading ridiculous stories. But less than 3 months later, he sat down for an interview and admitted something far stranger than any rumor. He revealed something that had already happened 3 years earlier, and he had never said a single word about it publicly. What was he hiding? The lump he called nothing. The rumor said brain cancer, but the truth turned out to be real and deeply unsettling. In June 2023, doctors confirmed that Shatner had stage 4 malignant melanoma, and it had already spread into his lungs and his brain. He was 92 years old at the time, an age where plenty of people would have quietly accepted whatever the doctors told them and let the disease run its course. Melanoma starts in the skin, in the cells that produce pigment. And when it reaches stage 4, it typically means the disease has traveled well beyond its original spot and settled into vital organs. That's usually the point where survival numbers get grim and doctors start talking in terms of managing the disease rather than beating it outright. The tumor itself started as a small growth on his cheek, something most people would look right past. Shatner and the people around him initially waved it off as a blocked salivary gland, a nuisance more than a threat. Salivary glands do sometimes swell and cause harmless lumps, so the assumption wasn't unreasonable. It also happened to be wrong. Once testing confirmed what it actually was, treatment moved fast. Surgeons removed the tumor, and afterward, Shatner spent nearly 2 years on immunotherapy, treatment designed to train his own immune system to recognize and attack the cancer cells that had already reached his lungs and brain. Immunotherapy doesn't work like traditional chemotherapy, poisoning cells indiscriminately. It works more like retraining the body's internal security system to finally notice threats it had been ignoring. That treatment isn't simple. It usually means regular infusions over an extended stretch of time, along with ongoing scans to see whether the immune system is actually doing its job. 2 years is a long stretch to carry that kind of uncertainty, especially at his age, not knowing month to month whether the treatment was actually working. He survived. That part isn't in question. What's harder to sit with is how close the whole thing came to being missed entirely, because the person who first waved it off wasn't a specialist scanning for melanoma. It was ordinary assumption, the same instinct that makes any of us shrug off a lump and hope it goes away on its own. That's the quieter side of survival stories. Nobody was filming him during those 2 years of treatment, and there was no dramatic press conference when the last scan came back clear. If even Shatner himself dismissed the warning sign sitting on his own face, who actually caught it in time? Shatner didn't catch his own cancer. Someone else did, and she was lying in a hospital bed fighting the exact same disease when she noticed it. What she saw, and what it cost her to say something, is where this story stops being about one man's survival and becomes something far more devastating. What was she seeing that everyone else, including her own father, had missed? The daughter who was dying too. The person who caught William Shatner's cancer was mid-chemotherapy for her own. In July 2022, a full year before Shatner received his melanoma diagnosis, his 61-year-old daughter Melanie was given her own terrifying news. Medical testing confirmed she had HER2 positive breast cancer. The disease had already spread to the lymph nodes in her chest, making it a stage 4 diagnosis. While Shatner was walking around with an undiagnosed tumor on his face, his daughter was fighting a brutal war for her own survival. According to an exclusive interview with Rolling Stone and People magazine, Melanie spent the next 18 months enduring a punishing medical regimen. She went through intensive chemotherapy, completed 30 separate radiation treatments, and eventually underwent a double mastectomy. It was during this period of extreme physical suffering that Melanie looked at her father and noticed something was fundamentally wrong. Shatner had already waved off the lump on his cheek as a blocked gland, but Melanie, deep in her own cancer treatments, looked closer. She recognized that the growth was changing. Her sharp eye forced the medical review that finally uncovered his stage 4 melanoma. This means Shatner owes his life not to his doctors or the universe, but to a daughter who had to notice his fatal symptoms while enduring brutal treatments herself. Melanie's own medical battle was incredibly severe. In a 2024 interview with UCLA Health, her medical team confirmed just how close she came to the edge. Breast surgical oncologist Dr. Carly Thompson explained that while Melanie was undeniably stage 4, her team believed she was one of those rare cases where the cancer was actually curable because it had only spread regionally. Dr. Thompson worked alongside UCLA health oncologist Dr. John Glaspie and radiation oncologist Dr. Joanne Wadehaus to save her life. Both father and daughter were navigating the very real possibility of death at the exact same time. Speaking to Fox 8, Melanie vividly recalled thinking that she simply did not have the physical strength to take care of herself and lose her father simultaneously. When Shatner received his own diagnosis, he tried to comfort her. Melanie remembered him giving her a massive daddy bear hug. He looked at her and said this was going to be a blip in her life. He promised her she was going to get through it, and it would just be a memory. If Melanie's own doctors called her survival rare, what does it say that she still had the strength to save her father, too? Father and daughter both walked away cancer-free. But this isn't the first time someone close to Shatner has quietly carried a battle he didn't fully see. And the last time, it ended in a way medicine couldn't fix. Nearly 3 decades earlier, there was another warning sign Shatner missed in his own home, and this time no one caught it in time. What happened when nobody was there to notice? What the coroner found in the pool. Nobody was there to notice because by the time Shatner found her, whatever had happened was already over. William Shatner married Narin Kidd in Pasadena in November 1997. The marriage didn't last long. A month before their first anniversary, the two of them separated, and on October 21st, 1998, Shatner filed for divorce, specifically asking that no alimony be granted. On paper, the relationship was already finished. What happened the following August had nothing to do with paperwork. On August 9, 1999, Shatner found Narin at the bottom of their backyard pool. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office later ruled her death accidental. Coroner's spokesman, Scott Carrier, explained that the official cause was drowning associated with neck trauma, and that her blood alcohol level measured 0.28%, more than 3 times the legal limit for driving in California. LAPD Detective Mike Coffey reviewed the scene and found no signs of foul play or self-injury, ruling it an accidental drowning. The reports from that investigation also noted bruising on her face and 2 cracked vertebrae, injuries consistent with a fall into the water rather than an act of violence by another person. That number matters because it frames everything that followed. A blood alcohol level that high affects balance, coordination, and reaction time significantly, which lines up with an accidental fall rather than anything more deliberate. Read plainly, that's someone with a blood alcohol level high enough to seriously impair coordination and balance, who likely lost her footing near the water in a way that turned fatal within seconds. There's nothing mysterious buried in the coroner's report. The mystery, if there is one, is emotional rather than forensic. Shatner had already legally moved to end the marriage. He'd asked a court to formalize the separation just 10 months earlier. And yet finding her body in that pool reportedly devastated him in a way that a routine divorce filing never could have prepared him for. Divorce papers can end a marriage legally in a matter of months. They don't undo years of shared history, arguments, affection, or whatever complicated mixture the two of them actually had. That's often how grief actually works. It doesn't wait for the paperwork to catch up. A relationship can be over in every legal sense and still leave behind a version of loss that has nothing to do with whether 2 people were still married. He'd already filed for divorce, so why did finding her body still nearly destroy him? Narin's death was the loss Shatner could point to, grieve publicly, and eventually build a charity around. But the next loss in his life didn't even give him that closure. It was a friendship that didn't end with a single tragic night, but with silence that stretched for 5 straight years, ending only when it was too late to fix. What actually caused that silence? 5 years of silence from his only friend. The silence started, according to Shatner's own account, sometime around 2012, when he was filming a documentary called The Captains. Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner had known each other since the 1960s, playing Spock and Kirk across a run of films and television that turned both of their careers into something neither of them could have fully anticipated. They spent decades attending the same conventions, sitting for the same interviews, and being asked over and over what it was like to play characters that fans considered practically inseparable. By most accounts, their friendship outside the show was genuine, not just a professional pairing maintained for publicity. That makes what happened afterward harder to explain, not easier. In January 2014, Nimoy revealed publicly that he had been diagnosed with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. He died of complications from that illness on February 27, 2015. In the years leading up to his death, Nimoy largely stopped responding to Shatner. Shatner has said he doesn't fully know why. In his memoir, Boldly Go, co-written with Joshua Brandon, Shatner pointed to the filming of The Captains as the likely turning point, a documentary he directed that involved interviewing Nimoy along with the other actors who had played Star Trek captains. Whatever happened during or after that filming, it produced roughly 5 years of near-total silence between two men who had once been close enough to call each other family. Shatner has described trying to reach Nimoy directly as Nimoy's illness progressed. He said he wrote him a heartfelt letter telling him how much he loved him and that he wished him well, given that Nimoy was dying. Nimoy never called back, and Shatner has said plainly that he still doesn't understand what happened between them. There was no public fight, no dramatic falling out captured on camera, just a slow withdrawal that Shatner has never been able to fully account for, even now. Shatner has also spoken about not attending Nimoy's funeral, having committed earlier to a charity event that he chose not to cancel. A decision that drew public criticism at the time, and one Shatner has had to explain repeatedly since. 5 years is a long time to let a friendship sit in silence, especially one built over decades of shared work and, by both of their own accounts, real affection. It's an even harder thing to sit with when the silence only ends because one of you has died. If Shatner still doesn't know why his closest friend stopped answering the phone, is that a wound that can ever actually close? 2 losses he couldn't stop. 1 cancer he didn't catch on his own. And through all of it, Shatner kept saying the same thing publicly, that he wasn't ready to die. But now, at 95, with the real reason finally out in the open, what does he actually say he's still holding on for? The reason he says he's not done yet. He says he's holding on for the people and the animals waiting for him at home. That question about endurance became a lot more urgent in September 2025, when paramedics were called to Shatner's Los Angeles home over an issue with his blood sugar. He addressed it himself soon after, writing that he had overindulged, thanking people for their concern, and adding that he was perfectly fine, along with a pointed reminder not to trust tabloids or, in his words, AI. It was a small, almost mundane health scare on its own. But it landed differently once the fuller cancer story came out months later. At 94, an ambulance visit like that is often treated as a warning sign in itself, even when the specific cause turns out to be something as ordinary as blood sugar. In the time since that September scare, Shatner has reportedly lost a significant amount of weight. And by the time he appeared at the Saturn Awards in March 2026, he looked noticeably slimmer than he had in previous years. That detail hasn't been tied to any single confirmed cause, and it's worth being careful with. But it sits alongside everything else in this story as one more sign that his body has been through more in the last few years than the public ever fully saw. What he's said clearly, in his own words, is why he wants to keep going. He said he wants to stay healthy and functioning, and that when the time eventually comes, he'd like to pass away in his sleep. Because he has people he loves, his family, and his dogs. That's not a complicated answer. It's not dressed up in anything philosophical. It's just the plain reason a 95-year-old man gives for wanting more time. It's a short list, not a long one, and that's part of what makes it land. After 2 cancer diagnoses inside the same family within a year of each other, the things he says he's holding on to are almost defiantly simple. That reasoning is also why he and Melanie are launching a podcast together called No Time But Now, where the two of them plan to talk with other cancer survivors and health experts, turning what nearly destroyed both of them into something they're handing to other people directly. It's a fairly direct pivot from surviving something privately to talking about it publicly, using the two of them as proof that a stage 4 diagnosis doesn't automatically mean the ending everyone assumes it does. After everything he survived, is it really the universe taking care of Shatner? Or is it the people who keep refusing to let him go? The real tragedy at 95 was never Shatner's mortality. It's how many times the people who loved him had to catch what he couldn't see in himself. A wife's pain, a friend's silence, and finally, his own daughter, spotting the cancer he'd already dismissed while fighting her own. Would you have noticed what she noticed?